In this video we're going to look at the Prelude by William Wordsworth about stealing a boat. The first task I'd like you to do is just have a little think about what the title means to you and just do a quick spider diagram or mind map, thinking about the word stealing a boat, any phrases, connotations or ideas that they summon up for you. Now what happens in the poem is Wordsworth describes an incident when, as a child, he stole a small boat one summer evening and rowed it confidently up the lake towards what he thought was a huge rocky range of hills on the horizon. Suddenly a huge menacing peak reared up behind the ridge and appeared to stride towards him like a living thing. Terrified, he turned back, moored the boat and returned home in a grave and serious mood. For a long time he was haunted by the experience, the familiar world of nature seeming unreal and threatening in his childhood imagination. To fully appreciate what happened in the incident, it is necessary to understand that the headstrong boy would be rowing backwards, keeping his eyes on the top of the craggy ridge as he rowed away from the shore. Only when he was further out on the lake, the distance increasing between the boat and the shore, would he see that beyond the line of rocks there was a huge mountain peak. As he struck and struck again, the mountain would appear to grow and advance upon him. To remove the menacing peak from his view, he had to turn the boat with trembling oars and head back to the cove from where he'd stolen the boat. We're now going to have a little look at some of the language and structural techniques that are used within the poem. Now to begin with, it's a happy rural image seen by the line, "a little boat tied to a willow tree." We can see that Wordsworth is confident in his surroundings by the phrase, "straight eye unloosed her chain." He starts straight away, there's no sense of fear or sense of hesitation about what he's doing. However, when he says it was an act of stealth and troubled pleasure, we get the sense that he knows he's doing something wrong, and it's the first clue in the poem that something is not quite right. The oxymoron, troubled pleasure, hints at the narrator's guilt. We move down a bit further. Again, we see his confidence when he says about how he's proud of his skill and with an unswerving line. So this suggests that he's done this rowing before and that he's actually maybe a little bit arrogant, and it contrasts with the mood that we see later on in the poem. There's an emptiness to the horizon seen in line 15 when it says the horizon's utmost boundary, far above, was nothing but the stars and the grey sky. And so this makes the appearance of the mountain later on even more shocking, because to Wordsworth at this stage it appears as though there's nothing there. He uses the metaphor of an elfin pinnace to give the idea that the scene is magical and otherworldly, but again it doesn't appear as threatening. And then towards the end of this section we see him using the simile when he says how he was moving through the water like a swan. It shows that he's confident, he's in control, and it enhances the contrast with the next line. Now the next line is where we have the turn point in the poem, and it's what we call the volta, and it introduces a complete change of tone. That one word, when, introduces the start of this, and it shows how suddenly the mountain appears on the horizon, and suddenly the language becomes very different now. It's much darker and more threatening, with the horizon's bound a huge peak, black and huge, and that repetition of the word huge again making it seem more threatening. The mountain is personified when it says upreared its head, and this makes it seem quite an ugly image, contrasting to the earlier beautiful images of the boat as elfin and swan. As the narrator rows away from the mountain, more and more of it comes into view. This means it seems like the mountain is getting bigger, it makes it sound like a nightmare. That's emphasised by the repetition, "I struck and struck again," and growing still in structure. The grim shape towered up towards me, and between me and the stars, and still, for so it seemed. There's a repetition of a sibilant sound here, this S sound being repeated, and it creates a sinister mood. The mountain appears calm, powerful and in control. It moves with measured motion, and it strode after me. It's showing the narrator's fear and how this mountain appears to be following him and chasing up on him. And through the silent water stole my way back to the covert of the willow tree. He's feeling guilty and afraid now. He needs to hide away like an intruder. It contrasts with that confident tone at the beginning where he straight eye unloosed her chain. He later goes on to say how through the meadows homewards went in grave and serious mood. So the event has had a big impact on him. Grave means serious, but it may also be a reminder of his own mortality, and actually it's made him think about life and death. He then says, "For many days my brain worked a dim and undetermined sense of unknown moods of being." So it shows that this incident doesn't leave him straight away, it stays with him. He's left feeling alone and unsettled by it. He says there later on, "No familiar shapes remain, no pleasant image of trees or sea or sky. So the narrator no longer thinks of nature in terms of pretty images. He learnt that there's more to it than that, and he begins to maybe respect it a little bit more and the power that he has. He ends by saying, "Trouble to my dreams." It's an unsettling image, and he's trying to help us empathise with him. It's a really big contrast to the tone and mood at the start of the poem, where he seems much more confident about stealing the boat. So a final couple of ideas for you to consider and do some revision work on is, firstly, have a go at sort of thinking about what ideas of power and conflict are explored in the poem, and maybe writing up 2 or 3 paragraphs looking at some of the different ideas that Wordsworth presents. And then just a bit of wider thinking about, do you think the young boy sees the incident as a punishment for taking the boat onto the lake without permission, and whether there is this sense of like the difference between the moral right and wrong of what he's done? So if you'd like to write up a couple of responses now to these questions, that would be excellent revision for you.